favorite times of the entire year is the Excellence in Christian Education Awards. This is the second year we've done it, and this year is cool because last year when we first did it, we were only able to go to D.C., meet some of the teachers there, and then maybe have some follow-up phone calls.
Right, and then just leave, yeah.
But today's show is really cool because a good number of those teachers who are receiving that award have come to the Herzog Foundation headquarters, and we can talk with them in person.
And I'm super excited. We've had the ability to sit together in a group, just a networking group, cohort group, listening to these individuals from last year and this year share their ideas. And I kind of geek out on that as a former teacher, because I'm like, you're listening to, like everything starts going and
just
you're getting
before
ideas.
this show, we were sitting in on a
Right.
breakout session talking about all the different facets, from special needs to history to
agriculture, like all the different ways that we need to have some
listening
work.
to where there are needs. We've run into
Yes.
that doing this show a lot, where
Yeah.
as a Christian education expands and grows, there's still a lot of holes to fill. That's no secret. So it's
Right.
great to get these people who are the best of the best together to collaborate. That's the goal.
So we're so glad to have you with us today. We've got Kyle Rapinchuk with us, and he is here out of Branson, Missouri. So the other thing that's kind of cool is we're pulling people from across the country, which is amazing in terms of forming relationships. So Kyle, we're here today to talk with you. We're so glad to have you with us.
Welcome to the foundation.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been wonderful to be here.
The Ozarks, for people that don't
yeah.
don't know Missouri,
Yeah.
probably know of the Netflix show, and that's the extent of it.
Oh my gosh.
Now,
and not fully accurate, let's be clear.
well, no,
right?
there's nothing about it. Oh, the Ozarks. I mean, born and raised in Missouri, I know the Ozarks always came with its own stereotype anyhow.
Sure.
Before the Netflix show, right, Kyle?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. But it's one of the hidden gems of the Branson area in southern Missouri is this School of the Ozarks, and then it's, what is the next step? The College of the Ozarks. So if you could explain for the audience what your school and then the college is too, because I think it's remarkable. I don't know that there are many like it in the country.
There really aren't. We're a Christian liberal arts institution, and we're one of the few truly work colleges in the nation. The College of the Ozarks was actually founded as School of the Ozarks back in 1906 as a grammar high school. Over the years, developed into a junior college, and then along with a four-year college, and then became only a four-year college. And then the name changed around 1990 to College of the Ozarks. Well, in 2012, under the leadership of our former president, Dr. Jerry C. Davis, and the Board of Trustees, they wanted to reopen kind of School of the Ozarks and bring that back. They felt like the impact that they could make on leadership for the next generation started earlier than college. And so we restarted, I guess you could say, with a 9 through 12 high school called School of the Ozarks as a laboratory school of College of the Ozarks. And it's classical Christian high school. Okay. We did that for 2 years, and it was a wonderful success. The community was pleased with what we were doing. The Board of Trustees was pleased. So they added a K through 6 in our third year.
Wow.
And then added 7th and 8th the next year. Gosh. And so we have now, for 8 years, been a K through 12, and just finished my 11th year and the school's 11th year as a high school.
That's amazing. My education was also started through a lab school opportunity, not Christian education, it was public education, so it's completely different, but it was a lab school setting on our college campus, and there was something that was just an amazing opportunity. It's the exact reason why I chose that school as a college student, because then I could walk into that lab school, do my practicums, observe, listen, learn, and I think that setup is amazing, and to have it as a classical Christian school sitting there has got to be such a neat way to start blending Christianity, blending education, teaching teachers, teaching students. That's really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And was that your start in teaching? Because that was something that occurred to me as we talked in these breakout sessions. You started in public education. How about you? Did you start in Christian education?
I did start in Christian education, but I actually started about a year and a half before School of the Ozarks at College of the Ozarks. And so my wife and I had both attended College of the Ozarks and graduated from there. Okay. Moved back to her hometown of Fort Worth, where I ended up doing my Master's of Divinity. And during that time, had no plans of teaching, didn't expect to teach, didn't want to teach, honestly. I hated public speaking and being in front of people other than playing sports. And so that really wasn't on my radar, but felt a sense of calling towards seminary. And we were just kind of pursuing whatever that looked like. And about 3 years into that, there were some people at church that just started sensing a teaching gift in me that I didn't see, and asked me to teach sometimes and give me some opportunities and said, listen, I really think this is a gift the Lord has given you. You should consider pursuing this. And so as we began thinking about that, I was like, well, if I'm going to teach, I'm going to end up pursuing further education and PhD work. And so I started asking questions of all my professors, like, what do I need to do to prepare for teaching? And I got a million different answers, but the only thing that kept coming back is, well, you need teaching experience. And so through our connections of having attended College of the Ozarks and having friends there, I found out as I was graduating that I could come back and teach some adjunct classes for the College of the Ozarks.
Okay, cool.
And so we moved back to the Branson area with the idea that I would be teaching a biblical survey class, and had the opportunity to add a composition class and a logic and language class. And for the next year and a half, I taught 9 adjunct classes for the College of the Ozarks, everything from Hebrew to composition to logic to biblical survey. Basically whatever they needed and they thought that I was qualified to teach.
So trial by fire.
I taught, yes. And and then in the spring of 2012, they announced that School of the Ozarks would be opening and they were looking for teachers. And so I applied and was blessed to receive the job and haven't looked back.
If that's not a God.
That's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
Putting all that together.
How? Well, first, there's 2 parts here. One, can you explain briefly? I know that's not why you're here, but I just think it's interesting. College of the Ozarks. Can you explain to people how that works? Because I hadn't even heard it. I mean, I've lived here in Missouri most of my life, and until we started getting into the Christian education discussion, I didn't understand how that school even worked.
And I'd walked through it I was there for a retreat, a women's retreat a couple of years ago, and I kept walking around like, this school operates how?
Yes.
How? And I will say it was the best hotel experience, the best food service experience, the best experience ever, and it's so unique.
This will blow your mind how this
for
works.
people that don't know, this is crazy.
Yes. So I had the blessing, as I said, my wife as well, of experiencing this first as a student. And when I said earlier, it was one of those truly, one of the only truly work colleges in America. None of our students, 1,500 resident students at College of the Ozarks, none of them pay tuition. In fact, they can't. They don't have an option to pay tuition.
Did you hear that? 1,500 students, and none of them pay a nickel in tuition.
None of them pay tuition. And so our students work 15 hours a week in a campus workstation and 2 40-hour weeks each school year. And everything else is covered by a student scholarship that is paid for by donors to College of the Ozarks.
That's
so
amazing.
It's a donor-driven school.
It is a donor-driven school in which our president and our development team have gone around and said, here's what our school is all about. And I think one of the things that is so unique and important about our institution is that we've remained on mission throughout our 117 years of existence about providing the benefits of a Christian education to the youth of both sexes who are deserving but otherwise unable to procure such education. And so the idea is 90% of our students demonstrate financial need, and only 10% would be those who don't have that kind of financial need. And so we're really still true to our mission. And so people provide for our institution because they say, I want to provide the benefits of a Christian education, very specifically Christian education, to students who otherwise couldn't afford to go to college, perhaps at all, but certainly to a Christian college and receive a Christian education. And that's been our mission for 117 years, and now that's extended to a K through 12 on our campus. And so we now have K through college education with the same model.
That was my next question. The K through 12 services, is that primarily the Branson, Ozark area, or do you have people come from all over? Or?
Primarily Northwest Arkansas, Southwest Missouri.
Okay.
We have no residents for our K-12, so it's all commuter. And but yeah, we have some that come down from Springfield, Ozark area, which is about 40, 45 minutes.
It's a drive.
Some from Northwest Arkansas, about the same distance. But
how many?
Our school is about 285 students in the K through 12.
Okay.
And we keep it intentionally small, 1 grade wide. So we have a single kindergarten class that begins with 16 students. We add some in first grade, some in 7th grade, some in 9th grade to max out at 25 students per grade.
Okay.
And so that leaves us with about a 285 student body, and we've been full since about the beginning.
And is that also, I don't think you just asked us, is that a needs-based also, or is that open to, okay.
We follow the same mission as the college,
Okay,
so
so
90% of our students at School of the Ozarks demonstrate financial need as well.
Okay, so it's the same.
Same mission
college.
as college, yes.
Okay.
Your background in coming up to teach versus let's say hers. We were just talking about this in a breakout session. What do you make of teachers who have it on their heart to get into Christian education? Maybe they came up as Christians, they are Christians, but they're in a public school setting. Could they make a transition to one like yours? Or do you think I was sort of intrigued with the idea that a Christian getting a traditional education degree from a traditional four-year college may not even occur to them, Christian school as opposed to going into public school.
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
They should switch. They should come join us in the work of Christian education.
Right away.
Absolutely, immediately. Because I believe in everything that we do. I believe that if all things come from God, which they do, then all things return back to God, which they do. If we're going to know anything rightly and as fully as we can know it as human beings, it's only known rightly and fully in relation to the God who created everything. And so for me, there's always something that even just not being able to openly share your faith in a public school, you're not even able to fully unveil the truth for people if you can't point them back to the creator of all things. And so I have lots of friends in public education. I love the work that they do. They love those kids. They do everything they can to share the gospel. But we don't have the same hindrances that they have, and we need a lot of help in Christian education as well.
I was just going to say there's a limit. There's a limit to what you can do.
If we can bring all of the great teachers from public school to Christian education, we'll bring the students with them as well. But I know it's on many of their hearts. They don't want to leave because they're afraid to leave the kids. But I think there's just a place to be able to say, to be true to your conscience, be true to the truth about Jesus Christ as the Lord of the whole world. And to teach in light of that. And so I get really excited when people consider that option. And like I said, I didn't intend on ending up here, and it's been an incredible blessing.
Well, you clearly impressed the Herzog Foundation folks and the team. That we didn't have anything to do with the judging, I'll be honest, but we're glad you're here. And congratulations on being one of the Educators of the Year.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
What a unique group that we have here at the Foundation and that we're honoring this year with the Excellence in Christian Education Awards. This one is maybe the most rare of any teacher that we've ever interviewed on the show. Brooke Stewart, one of the Excellence in Education Award winners this year, is a Christian educator in the field of agriculture.
Which I love. I think it's just such a unique piece of something that we haven't had at all, and people aren't aware of.
Well, and if you saw where the Herzog Foundation sits, we're smack in the middle of nothing but agriculture.
Rural roads and fields.
So she feels right at home. She comes from Texas, and Brooke, welcome to the show. Congratulations.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Dallas? I've forgotten which part of Texas.
I'm from a little town north of Fort Worth.
North of Fort Worth?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I know down there that's sensitive. That's a big deal.
It is. Well, I'm on the right side of it.
So let's just go 30,000 feet and ask, how does maybe from a creation point of view we understand it, but how does one teach we went to an agriculture school, raising the science of farming, the science of ag, the science of raising livestock, but how do you infuse Christianity in that, beyond creation?
Oh, it's easy. It's so easy. And that's what my first interview in Christian education, he said, well, what does this have to do with being a Christian? I said, everything. You know?
Which is a perfect answer for every topic. But how do you make that then specific to what you're teaching
everything.
Well,
in your
initially,
classroom?
so let's back it up and then we'll move forward a little bit. In Texas, we like to say agriculture is more than cows, sows, and plows. That's kind of
that's true too, right?
And I know that's so silly sounding, but it's very true. I teach things like leadership and personal development and career development and how to be an upstanding citizen, and what's so innovative about teaching agriculture in a Christian school is that agriculture and any career and technical program is already innovative, but we get to take that a step further and teach them to use those skills that they're going to use to work hard and be successful and be the backbone of our country, to be disciples.
Amen.
That's my kids, when they leave my classroom, they should be able to go into any room and talk to anybody, but do they talk about cows, or do they take that a step farther and turn it into talking about God?
Yes.
It's amazing, which is that's what I think I love most about the concept of Christian education, is that you really can bring everything together full circle. The places where I had to stop as a public school teacher and couldn't say, or had to say, we cannot say a prayer here, or I can't be doing a prayer, that kind of thing. And yet you can, and do it in a way that we are raising people up. And that's incredible.
Right. And I think in Christian education, what makes an excellent educator is teaching our kiddos those biblical principles and how to be a Christian and how to be courageous and how to be strong, but then taking that a step further and teaching them how to apply that in the real world. And, you know, a lot of people miss the mark. You know, we want to protect our babies. We want to keep them at home and make sure they're in this safe environment. But what happens when they leave us? And, you know, through agriculture and the opportunities that come with teaching that and our intracurricular organizations like FFA and extracurricular like 4-H, I get to put my kiddos in the real world and watch the fruits of their labor. I get to watch them be those disciples, you know, and it may be daunting and scary, but I've trained them up, you know, you train them up as they should go. And that's what we're doing.
How long have you been teaching within a Christian education setting?
This will be my 4th year in Christian education.
And did you come to your school with them having a program already in place?
Not at all.
Okay.
It was your idea?
Yes, we're new and exciting.
How new?
For agriculture.
How about all of it?
All of
How about
it.
your whole school? Like
Our school, I think this is year 13.
Okay, so it is
So,
relatively. it's
yeah.
still
How many
relatively
students?
new.
A little over 500.
Okay, so that's
So-
about the same size as what we have our daughter in. Is it a K-12 then?
Yes, we are
Okay,
K-12.
So that is very similar.
And that's something that's really awesome with us too. You know, in public education, agriculture is big in Texas. In public education, they have 7th through 12th. We get to take that a step further, and our kids have agriculture kindergarten through 12th grade.
That really is.
So just
a
like they would
cool-
go to art or computer or any of the other, you know, specials or electives,
Yeah.
they have agriculture for 30 minutes once a week.
So how did that program come to be? How did you end up, what was I mean, I know it's probably a far longer story than what we
It
have time
is,
for, but
it
what,
is.
how did you kind of get that
Did you
in the
propose
pipeline?
it?
Kind of. I grew up in agriculture and FFA and all of those things. I didn't never plan to be an ag teacher. Ended up, God put me on that path, and I was in public school. And when I started having my own family, I decided I did not want to be in public school and I did not want them there. So I left teaching for a year. Well, our church and school are affiliated.
Okay.
And I was in the mother's room with one of my babies, and a very, very dear friend was in there as well. And she said, okay, nobody's crazy enough to do this, but maybe you. And I said, oh no, what
know
are you
it's
gonna get
coming,
me
right?
into? And she said, we're craving it. You know, our kids, our teachers, our parents are craving this here. Like, we need this, but we need somebody to do
Someone
it.
to do it.
Just go talk to them. And I said, I don't know, like, that's a lot. I don't know if I'm ready for that, you know? And so Wednesday night at church, somebody had set up a meeting for me.
And there you
And
go.
so I went, and they said, okay, let's go. Let's do
Wow.
it.
I think that's amazing. We just added, I think within the last year, a horticulture
Yes.
at ours. And it's so neat because it's one of the roadblocks that I think parents come into with, well, my child can get all these elective opportunities at the, at the
Right.
public high school, and it's very limited here. And so it's so great to see something unique like this, because that kind of helps, like we were talking about earlier in our breakout session, like dispel those myths that
Absolutely.
it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe they didn't have it before,
Right.
but now they've
And we've
got
seen
it.
that be a huge draw. We have lots of sports programs, and I feel like that's normally the bread and butter. You know, that's a good starting point. That's where everybody starts. But what about those kiddos that may not,
Want that.
that might not be their thing? You know, they need a place to go to.
Yeah.
And like I tell my kids, try me. You know, I'll get a kid in my class, try me. You don't like ag? That's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine. What do you like? Oh, you like football? Okay, well, have you ever heard of turf grass management? You know?
Wow.
So we can apply it
Perfect.
to all kinds of things. And I think that's why you don't see more of these programs in Christian education, is because they just don't understand. You know, a lot of people don't know what agriculture is.
Well,
That's
that's
true.
right. And
Yeah.
so if there's somebody watching or listening and they think, boy, our school could really benefit from something like that, what would you recommend? What's a good starting place? Or resources? Or maybe even reaching out to you?
Yes. Call me in a heartbeat, like any day.
So did you
There's
just
not
kind of-
any.
I was going to say, so then what did you do, like, to start it? I mean, you have your background, which obviously is a
right.
huge help.
The FFA, the National FFA organization, is amazing and
Okay.
huge and very widespread. And there's very few Christian schools and private schools that have broken into that, but they're ready for it,
Okay.
you know? And
Now
so
that's interesting.
That's super interesting
Oh,
to me.
Because I was going to ask
Yeah.
you, and this is a bigger topic maybe than we have time, but yours is a field that I would assume is maybe one of the shortest walks between the secular world and the faith world. I would think that most people in the study of agriculture have to have some reverence for a creator. I would think, but maybe I'm misrepresenting.
Story time.
Okay, please.
All right.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks ago, I had 20 high school kids in Dallas at the Texas FFA convention. It's a week-long convention. It's a huge production. It's amazing. They worked so hard to put it on. There were 17,000 kiddos there. Every song that played was a Christian song. We pray before every meeting, anything, workshop, anything.
Wow.
It's there. Our keynote speaker was a pastor.
I never would have ever assumed that or guessed that.
You have 12 officers, and for their retiring address, every single one of them gave glory to God. You could feel it in the room. I promise you. And that is a primarily public school
Right. I was just going to say, you've got majority of those kids
So
there.
that is the FFA.
That is
at
the
present
FFA.
today. That's
Yes.
still very much who they are nationwide.
Our
That's amazing.
state vice president, who is going on to run for national FFA president, prayed right there. He said, if I could do one thing before I get off this stage, it's going to be pray for you guys. And he knelt right there on the stage and prayed for the whole room.
And most of the kids in that program are going to public schools.
Yes.
But they might be Christians or they might not be. But what a cool
But
place.
what a way to make it cool.
Yeah.
Right. Make it part
How
of what they're
cool
doing, what they
that
love.
they just make that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's part of what's hard too.
Yeah.
Right. Showing kids that this is cool.
Right.
So my Christian school kids are in a pretty safe environment.
I love it.
That's amazing.
So people, sincerely, I mean, I don't want to, can people reach out or find you online or
Yes.
email if they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever. I mean, we don't, and we always have information like
Yeah, I
this
guess
in our
we'll put
show
the
Send it
link in
notes.
the
out.
show notes.
So we'll get that
Yeah,
information and have it
absolutely.
there. But someone just saying like, how do I get started? And just
Right.
kind of,
How
I
do
don't
you
want to
get
make
started?
you
You find a vision and initiative and call me.
find
I
initiative.
love that.
And then that National FFA and the AgriLife Extension is a great resource too, to really help get that started on that end of it.
Well, Brooke, congratulations on receiving this well-earned award. You were one of those in the building that we heard about first because of the dynamic
just
way
different. It was just
in which you're working
right,
out there.
Right,
It's
just
really
unusual.
Thank
I
you.
love it. Thank you for your
Congratulations.
time.
Well, thank you so much.
We are excited to continue these conversations. This has just been a joy today to get to talk with people about their backgrounds, about their experiences, what they're seeing within Christian education. And to kind of wrap up our episode for today, we have Joe Cox with us, and we're so excited that you were able to take the time. He's out of the St. Louis area. It sounds like doing a little bit of everything within your school setting, and we're so excited to get to hear that from you. And thank you again for being here.
And congratulations.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity. Being here has just been a real joy, and it's really exciting to see all the great things that are going on with the Herzog Foundation.
We were having a conversation with the group, and I'd mentioned that earlier. I heard your comments, and it was interesting to me that you specifically come from the Lutheran tradition, and you mentioned sort of a network, I think. I don't want to misspeak. Sort of a
that's
network
correct.
of schools, if you will. Could you kind of explain the way your school is set up? Because everyone, some people just plant their very first school. Some are part of a larger denomination. How does it work in the Lutheran faith?
Sure. So, and in my school is specifically related with the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod as our denominational setting. And when the German settlers first came over, and part of that foundation was in Missouri along the Mississippi River, very much there was a concern of planting schools for the sake of educating their young people. And of course, at the time, as German immigrants, it was German schools. So out of that grew a system where our churches are interconnected. While the congregations are somewhat autonomous, they have chosen to walk together with the Missouri Synod, and so they agreed to abide by theological guidelines, etc. Out of that has grown a university system that at one time had as many as 10 colleges and universities, 2 seminaries, and the second largest parochial school program in America, second to the Roman Catholic churches. So for the most part, what you have is this affiliation of churches within the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and the schools are very much fed by the Concordia University system. I'm actually one of the odd ducks that I didn't go to Concordia College, but I did go to the seminary in St. Louis, which is how I got into education, Lutheran education in particular.
So the Lutheran tradition has always had a focus. This is what makes it kind of interesting, if I'm hearing you correctly, because while we've had shows talking about other churches growing schools or using their building to maybe bring Christian education in, that's always been sort of a staple with the Lutheran tradition?
Absolutely. I mean, the reality
I don't think I
is
knew that.
Lutheranism grew out of a university
Okay.
in Wittenberg, and so education has always been a mainstay, even to the point that my home congregation started first as a school, and then out of that we grew a mission congregation.
Oh, wow.
Now, financially, I don't know that is a model that is going to continue.
Yeah.
Maybe not sustain. Yeah, right.
But and the school is doing well
Sure.
After about 20 years now. But yeah, education and Lutheranism really do go hand in hand, and there's that long tradition of a desire for excellence in education, and particularly educating in such a way, we like to talk about it being Christocentric, that everything that drives what we do and what we believe comes down to the redemption that comes by way of the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so we like to say that is the foundational stone for everything we do, including our educational parameters.
I don't mean to stray too much in the conversation, but I am kind of fascinated, given what we know is just true in most Christian faiths today in North America. They're going through these cultural challenges. I'll leave it at that. Mm-hmm. How have you weathered that? Because I know that's something, as we've explored Christian education, we took our daughter out of a secular situation, put her in a Bible-based Christian kingdom education environment. But you know what I'm talking about, and I think most of this audience does too. How has the Lutheran tradition and your schools weathered that?
That's a great question that could take up a whole,
That's a whole special show.
In a real brief nutshell, and I'm not the greatest historian in this area, but part of what's being dealt with, not to the severity or not to specifically how overt it is, but the underlying foundational principal issues that are starting to rise to the surface now actually rose to the surface in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod back in the 1970s. So on one level, this isn't entirely new.
Okay.
It's become more manifest. Mm-hmm. And so there was a schism of sorts. And so we dealt with that a long time ago. And out of that, there are still splits. There are congregations.
So there were school splits, much like we've heard of church splits. Is that accurate?
Yeah, to some degree.
Yeah.
Usually the school would follow
The church.
Where the church.
the church,
Okay.
Sure,
because
that makes
the elementary schools are all tied to congregations or some sort of association of congregations, whereas our high schools are generally independent but made up of an association of congregations. So, for example, we have about 30 congregations that are members of our association.
Okay.
In St. Louis. For our part of it, our association has 2 high schools. The cultural issues that still remain, and I think these are really important, is you have in education, and even in the preparation of Christian educators, who are coming from these strong confessional traditions, a couple of things. Pedagogy has been tainted with this progressive mindset for the last 150 years. It's part of the culture we all breathe, and in many ways, people don't necessarily recognize that it's there.
I was just going to say they don't even know what they're being,
Right.
I guess, indoctrinated with because it's just common.
And I want to be careful too. It's not just them. It's us becoming aware of it. And as I've been able to do advanced studies and I've been able to see more of the deeper philosophical underpinnings, I'm able to start picking this out. But the reality is, it's in the cultural air we breathe.
Yep.
And so even the most well-meaning Christian educators are sometimes approaching things not recognizing those foundational principles that are governing how they approach or how they look at the world. And so that's a struggle we all have. Obviously, today people are becoming more aware as some of the issues have become much more pronounced and the spiritual warfare is very much out in the open. But we have to be really careful of recognizing that there's much more to it than just what's making the front page, and it's really how we live and breathe.
And it's such a huge responsibility. We've spoken with people on this podcast, and as parents, we've spoken with just church leaders specifically about using that discernment that we all have as Christians in just the programs we choose for our kids at church, and just what we're exposing them to on a daily basis, and how we live in the world, not succumb to it, and maintain our Christianity, maintaining our own faith and our own beliefs. That's tough to do. So, and I think I specifically am always kind of like, this author I like, but what's happening here in this book, and bringing it back to the Bible always, first and foremost.
It's an important warning.
Right.
Yeah, it's an important warning for us, because this is something we've said a lot. Sending your child off to a Christian school doesn't mean
that it will be
the world
full,
can't creep in.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it's a hard challenge for school administrators. I know you play a lot of different roles, and you've played different roles in your experience. That's a big challenge for schools now, as we've kind of seen some influx in schools across the board that are Christian, whether they're discipleship style schools or evangelical, starting up brand new from the ground with no church associated. Those are big things to be paying attention to, for sure, I would think.
And what's really important, and again, we all have our special gifts. So when I run into people who don't necessarily see the depth there, it's not so much that, there's something wrong with them. This is just the area where the Lord's pushed me, and they have other gifts that they're bringing to our family, to this body. But what we have to be really careful of is that the veneer of Christianity over top an educational system doesn't necessarily make the system itself educational. Christian.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
And so recognizing that these are all things we should expect to see. Prayer in the classroom, some sort of worship experience in the community, the fact that teachers are bringing in their faith into the different disciplines as well as they can. But it needs to be much more than just an add-on.
Right.
It really needs to be the groundswell of the worldview, and I'm even hesitant to call it a worldview. It's just simply reality. Our world is broken, and it has been redeemed by Christ, and that impacts everything. And even the things that aren't spiritual, aren't supernatural, as simple as mathematics or engineering or carpentry, the ramifications of that reality still extend outwards as we're preparing our students for whatever vocations the Lord is going to call them to do, and to do so as Christians.
Like if there's ever an ad for for parents that are possibly, it's kind of teetering on the edge of what do I do when it comes to school, and defining what education means to them, and how Christianity should be the main focus of that. That's a ringing endorsement, if I've ever heard, to remember that and keep that first and foremost.
I love discussing the culture of it with you. It's interesting. Our daughter, she's only a couple of years into it. She's middle school now, entering high school. It seems that kids that are in their middle school years and maybe even high school years, parents that have decided to make that move, that's a hard culture shift for the preteen, teen versus a child that's come up in the kindergarten, first grade, second grade. How do you deal with that? Have you seen that? Because my theory is, as Christian education grows, we're going to have this issue of kids that have spent half their educational lives.
We already have.
In the kind of the secular world, and maybe aren't either, I don't know, I won't always say not open to it, but maybe they don't know what they don't know, and that can create some tension in a culture, right?
And it's intimidating. It's intimidating to have to navigate that.
Yeah, I have had to deal with the intimidation factor. Oftentimes it's a matter of, I have to take this religion course, and I don't know anything about religion, and how am I possibly going to succeed academically here? And part of it is, look, we're working with you. It's just like taking algebra for the first time. We're not expecting that you already know algebra. Part of it is, we've implemented, for example, an introductory introduction to Christianity course for students as a way to bring them in, and it's a pass-fail course. It's really more of a relational course, but to help them learn the vocabulary so that they don't feel so overwhelmed. But what I've really encountered, almost contrary to your expectation, what we have is so many students who have grown up in the Christian education system don't recognize how good they have it. And that's not me trying to pat myself or fellow educators on the back. They just take it for granted.
Sure.
And what I have are students who come in and they see the difference, even non-Christian students. And they recognize that something's going on here that they weren't experiencing.
That's amazing.
Cool.
Just a couple of years ago, I had a young lady who, not identifying as a Christian, if anything, she was wrestling with her sexual identity and so forth. And as we were talking one day, and here she is, it's lunchtime, and she's talking to a teacher and openly being able to share what she knows I don't necessarily condone or agree with, but I'm receiving her as a fellow human being in love, and I'm listening to her. And one of the things that shared is, I could never talk about this at the public school. The things we talk about in literature class wouldn't be allowed. I came here expecting censorship, and what I've found is there's more free speech in the Christian school than in the public school.
Wow.
Which is, I think, a big tenet of what we've talked about. Almost every educator that we have talked with has consistently said, we really want our students to understand and to know how to think for themselves, to think critically. And I think with that topic specifically, I know our sons will come home and they'll, I think year after year, probably the last 4 years, both of them have said, well, we're working on persuasive writing, but our teacher said we can't talk about this. I'm like, well, what are we offering them, right? Like, what is that about? And so it's versus our daughter, who's like, well, I can talk about, so it's
Absolutely.
we see that, I guess that pushback against one another, and that's a really great point, especially for the schools. I know there's a lot of different Christian schools that have, whether they have a statement of faith, or, belief system, whatever, however it works, we all, I think, have that same call to treat people as humans, regardless of where they are, and to witness to them. And that sounds like those are amazing experiences happening within your building.
So, Joe, you're one of our Educators of the Year. Congratulations to you. What do you find when you've been spending time with your fellow teachers who've received this award? What makes a great Christian educator in your view?
First and foremost is dedication to the Lord. I mean, it's kind of the obvious thing to say. As I have been interacting with these folks, and the reality is I have this opportunity on a daily basis. For me personally, to be here, it's because I'm part of an amazing team of people who have recognized the call of God in their life. It's people who love kids, who love the Lord and want to share that love, not just in terms of vocalizing it, but in terms of living it out. One of the conversations that came up earlier was one of the teachers, and this is a practice I do also, you're a human being who's sinful, who makes mistakes. And to look at a student who maybe you've embarrassed a little bit in class unintentionally, and to say, that's on me, I sinned against you, will you forgive me? And to have that humility and let the student see that you really are living what you claim, that you believe it.
Right.
I think there's also a push towards excellence, a realization that though we are saved by grace, sin is not condoned, nor is mediocrity. We are not perfect, nor shall we be until the Lord returns. But we're sure called to strive toward it, not as some sort of burden that bears us down, but the joy that comes from striving to hone the gifts and the blessings that the Lord has given us, and doing that in the service of our younger siblings in Christ, and helping them discover the joy in the world, the mystery in the world, and with that, be part of the molding and forming process they have, so that rather than being shoved down by jumping through the hoops of standardized tests, etc., that mystery inspires them to find their own voice, to find their own path, and ultimately to find their own joy as they go out and serve God by serving humanity.
How's that for a promo?
I know. It's like,
That guy just made
I
promo
think that's
for us.
incredible,
Yep.
right? And it's one of the blessings of getting to do this, is that when I listen to teachers, when I talk with them, I'm just inspired again and hopeful. We talk a lot about how things feel discouraging and how it's tough to not feel down, but this setting, talking with teachers, specifically like Joe, it's encouraging, it's heartwarming, and it is definitely a blessing straight from God.
Joe, congratulations to you on being one of our Educators of the Year.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to come and talk with
Honor
you.
to meet you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing your witness. What a wonderful...
And if you have any questions about anything we've talked about today, we'll try to include that information in our show notes.
Yep.
Have that down below. As always, anytime you want to go ahead and give us a review, 5-star review, wherever you listen to podcasts, we appreciate
And
that.
let us hear from you, too. If you have comments or thoughts about this show, or you ever have any guest suggestions or whatever, you can always email us, right?
Yep, always. And we're just going to keep trying to keep that information current and relevant for you, and we'll see you here next time.
Making the Leap is a podcast presentation courtesy of the Herzog Foundation. Please rate and comment on the show, as well as subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'll see you next time on Making the Leap.